Women's Virtual Chats. Every week we speak to experts and inspirational people about topics that influence us as women in the 21st century. Today we have Tim Tialto, a very dear friend of mine. He is a 3-time Emmy award-winning host. He's of Life After the Crown. I've been able to be his guest on the show once before, being a former Miss Universe. I'm your host today, and we are just so incredibly delighted that you've joined us. Please feel free to interact with us, give us your questions on the chat bar. If you have joined, we'll be sure to pose those questions to our guest. Tim, you have a very colorful background. Not only are you an entrepreneur, but you also have history in the pageant industry.
Yep.
And man, I mean, that's very unusual.
Yeah, you know, I've always loved to be in front of audiences. My first 6 years of my career was on television. I continued to kind of do that in hosting, and hosting really by no fault of my own brought me to pageants kind of indirectly, you know, through a former Miss Georgia USA who got me into the Miss Universe system, which is how we met. Previous to that, back in the days when I actually did the news, I did 2 Miss America pageants. I did the Miss West Virginia America and Miss Missouri America. So a long history in pageants, not something I ever actually sought to do. It kind of found me. And just happened to be, you know, pretty good at it, and just been very thankful for the time that I've been able to spend in it. And certainly I've done my best to give back to it as much as it's given to me.
Well, you certainly have. Your podcast, Life After the Crown, highlights how women have achieved so much through pageantry, gaining the skills, the insight, the opportunities available. I myself, as a former Miss Universe, I've been able to establish, you know, a foundation, a children's foundation, after 28 years, raising millions for children's causes. Who has been the most inspirational person, do you think, that you've met in the pageant industry? And what have they achieved through this process?
That's a really tough question. I mean, I've had over 100 women, including yourself, on the podcast, and to pinpoint one would be very difficult, because I think everybody brings a different aspect to their past, depending on not only what they did in the pageant world, but what they've done since, what they've done professionally, maybe what they've done philanthropically. Boy, that's a tough one. I could say you, because you've done tons philanthropically. Let me think about that one, and as we go through the podcast or the webinar here, I will be happy to spit it out if I can think of the exact one. But so many have done so much, and I think that's one of the reasons that I started the podcast, was that I think a lot of women struggled with graduating from the pageant world into, you know, what we'll call real life or professional life, and just wondering how to make that jump. I had actually dealt with this previously with some friends of mine who were professional baseball players. And when they graduated from playing baseball professionally to becoming the average Joe, they really struggled. Some of them suffered depression. Some of them went bankrupt. And so what I saw happening as I was in the pageant world was, when some of the, you know, state title holders especially were giving up their crowns, they were having, I wouldn't say, you know, the same types of issues, but certainly the same emotions of, gosh, what do I do now? This has been my life up until now. It's all I've known. It's all I've practiced. It's all I've learned for. And now I feel like I'm starting over. And so I wanted to give them guidance, not through me, because I obviously wouldn't have any idea what that looks like, but through people who have gone through it before, like yourself. And so that's kind of where the idea for the podcast came from.
But it really is very apparent that through, you know, the fact that you are an entrepreneur, you were able to really advise people along the way. And tell us a little bit more about your entrepreneurial just experience over the last COVID pandemic time. It's really been a challenging time for everybody, but you in particular have come out tops. You've just reframed the whole situation.
It has been challenging, but I'll explain a little bit of the difference between. So I have 2 businesses. So my wife and I own a hair extensions business here in Colorado. We have the #1 salon in Colorado, and that obviously had to be shut down. We had a state order that we had to shut that down for 41 days. And so there was nothing we could do with that one. Now, however, I also have with a friend of mine, I'm a partner in a healthy organic meal delivery business that is local to the St. Louis area. And so I do a lot of the back end operations and marketing. And we actually had record months from the moment COVID started all the way until right now, and we continue to see 20 to 30% increases from last year. I think the biggest reason for that particular business is everybody at the beginning was worried about their immune system. Oh, I can't get COVID if I have a good, strong immune system. So how can I stay healthy? Well, one of the greatest ways to do that is to eat healthy. And so we offered the ability to eat healthy, have it delivered to you. We won't touch it. We will give the bag on your porch. We'll leave it for you. You do the rest, eat the food, you're going to be fine. And so I think a lot of people connected with that. And then also restaurants were closed, except ones like ours, which we were only delivery. So if you didn't go out to eat, if you just wanted something other than what you make in your own kitchen, it gave us the advantage that we could provide that to you. So I think those two reasons really helped us. But we haven't seen any slowdown to this point, even as things start to open back up. So I'm excited about that. I believe that a lot of people who wouldn't have otherwise seen us now saw us because they're at home, they're on social media, they're seeing our advertisements, etc. And things are going well. So God's blessed us, and I feel very good about that and thankful for it.
What gave you the cutting edge? Do you think it was your background in being able to market that business? Because in a time like this, I think everybody was pretty unaware or unsure how to use the internet and how to use social media.
I think one of the things that I've been gifted with, and I felt like it helped me in television and hosting, and it also helps me in marketing, is the fact that I can read people well. I really can tune into what's the emotion that they're feeling, that they're really wanting you to respond to. And so the way you talk through your marketing, you talk through your advertisements, your posts, whatever, you're really looking for that core issue in their heart that they're like, this is what I need help with. And if you can talk to that, most people are willing to respond and pull out their, pocketbook or whatever and give you something in order to get something back. And I think that's one thing that I feel like I've always been very good at. And I feel like even in the pageant world, I'm able to kind of tell on stage what the girls are feeling very quickly, which is why I'm able to respond sometimes in a very quick way, which helps them feel comfortable and, keeps the crowd in check, that it's not some big embarrassing moment. And so, that's just a gift I've been given.
A couple of those in history.
Yeah, they happen every year. Every pageant, there's always at least one slip or something, or somebody forgets to go where they're going. Happens all the time. And, I pride myself on being able to make sure the girls don't get embarrassed or feel like they're alone up there. And I just hope that I help them. I think that's my biggest hope when I go up on that stage, is that the girls have a great experience.
When you look at the difference between being an entrepreneur and being someone who's been in the corporate world for a long time, a lot of people, and especially women, have been in the corporate world and would like to be entrepreneurs, but really don't know that there is a great difference, right? There's a difference to approach this. What would your tips be?
I'd say that, there's a couple of differences. I was in the corporate world in media. So I worked for the very typical local news stations, and kind of operated in that environment in which, you make a salary, you go out, and no matter how much work you do, you still get the same paycheck at the end of 2 weeks, or no matter how many awards you win or whatever, it just, and I'm only talking economically in this instance, but I think what I felt and saw outside of the world of television and corporation run businesses was that the limitations were lifted. I no longer was limited to what the salary told me I could make or how many people I could affect. I was now limited to my ability to work as hard as I want and really go after the goals and dreams and visions that I believe I can achieve, and that really nobody can hold me back but myself and my ability to learn and apply those things and, A/B test them and try things out and see what works, what doesn't work. And over time, trust me, I've had a lot of failures, but for every failure I've had, I've now gained a way to not do that in the future and apply the successful principles that I've learned to certain things. And now when we create businesses, just these last two, it's not hard to know that I can definitely make seven-figure businesses pretty easily within a couple of years. And I feel very confident about that. As long as I have a passion for the idea and that I believe that idea helps the greater good.
But there is a huge difference in taking a risk as an entrepreneur.
Yes, very much so.
Being in the corporate industry where, you don't have that risk. So what would your suggestion be to people out there starting a business?
it's kind of the old adage my parents used to tell me, get a steady paycheck with benefits and insurance, and make sure you're covered. But when you go out on your own, those things, they don't evaporate, but the comfort or the cushion that it's there all the time, no matter what, goes away. And so if you're going to step into the entrepreneurial world, number one, know that it is a big risk. There is no guarantee that you're going to succeed. There's no guarantee that, your product or your idea or whatever it is, that your service or whatever you want to do is going to succeed. You have to learn what the market is looking for and then find things to, as I talked about earlier, it's like trying to find those emotions that people are feeling. And then how do you fulfill those emotions? The old, what's the old six word adage? Find a need and fill it. As an entrepreneur, that's what you're doing. What do people need right now? Well, COVID has presented a ton of different needs now that are completely new to the market that nobody's ever experienced before. And I guarantee you right now, as we speak, a lot of new businesses are being born that likely will be very successful. The question is, you can't just rely on one specific time and element in culture. So, COVID happened over a couple of months. It'll probably carry out maybe till the end of the year, and then we'll forget about it. Can your business carry past that? Is it something that has staying power? And is it something that you can grow and scale? Those are the things that you really have to think about if you are going to start a business and not just capitalize on quick, hot trends that are happening. And to give you an example of that, in the healthy meal delivery business, keto was huge 2 years ago. Keto and paleo, those were like the two hot button issues. Everybody wondered, do you have keto? Do you have paleo? And half of them didn't really even know what that was. But we created a meal plan for keto, but we didn't get rid of the rest of our menu. But that year, that keto meal plan was our number one seller. This year, it's like number 5. It's still kind of there. People are still into it. We'll call them the late adopters are still there kind of buying it. But if we relied on that, we'd be out of business. And so that's what you have to think about when you're building a business is, what are the things that people need, but also how long will they need those things? And if they're not going to need them for more than a couple of years, it's probably not the greatest business idea to pursue, because it will end in disappointment and the fact that you have to start over and create another business just like it.
So our women listeners, and we do have men listeners as well, what advice would you have for women out there who would like to start a business? Your wife being your partner as well in your businesses. If you had to hear her speak to you right now as well, what would you both advise women out there to start if they wanted to start a business?
I think the number one thing you have to have is the courage and the work ethic. And I combine those two into one thing. My wife works very hard and she loves to work very hard. We've had employees who've worked for us that I knew that in their heart, they wanted to go out on their own eventually. And my job was, I felt like I want to train you to make sure that you have all the tools and elements that you need, that when you go out, you can succeed. The one thing that I can't teach is, do you truly have the staying power, the resilience, if you will, to gut through the tough times? Because I don't care who you are or how great you look or how successful you've been. Entrepreneurship is a tough road in the beginning, and you're gonna take a lot of hits. And are you willing to go through that? Are you willing to not have a lot of money? Are you willing to, skimp on what you have to eat every week, or just, lacking in the amount of entertainment that you go do every week, or go have a drink with buddies, or go to the movies? I mean, those are the things that you have to sacrifice if you truly want to succeed. In the beginning of both of the businesses that I'm talking about now, we didn't leave this house. I mean, we were constantly working on things, and, we were eating really light. We weren't going out and spending money on entertainment every weekend. I mean, we were watching movies on television and just doing everything we could to save a buck here and there until we hit that point, or that tipping point of, making a profit margin that we felt comfortable we could now live on and maybe expand and start doing some more things. I think you have to have that mentality if you're going to be a real serious entrepreneur who will succeed. If you're not, you're going to be like a lot of entrepreneurs out there who has an idea, who calls themselves an entrepreneur, who says, yeah, I own my own business. But if we actually looked at your balance sheet and how you're really doing it, it's a sad state of affairs. And so, we'll call them the posers. There's a lot of posers out there. And if you really want to be a successful entrepreneur, you can't be a poser. You've got to have grit. You've got to have resilience, and you got to have the work ethic to get through those first couple of years. And then when you hit that point, then you'll be living the life that everybody else looks at and goes, I want to be an entrepreneur too.
It always looks so easy from the outside, right?
Yeah, it does. It does. Especially when you first start here, you get so excited those first few weeks of, just coming up with your name and your branding and your color scheme and the font on your website, all that fun stuff. Yeah, it's great. And then the reality kicks in that like, okay, now where are the customers? Where are they at? And then figuring that part out, that's the next one.
And there's also something to be said for balance. The personal life as well as your business. And
Yes.
And it's more challenging, I guess. And I work with my husband. I know you do with your wife.
Mm-hmm.
How do you create that balance? Because you're a super dad. I mean, you are babysitting right now as we speak. I don't know
Keep
how
sleeping in there, yeah.
the newborn
Yep.
to sleep right now. This
Yeah.
is amazing. So how does that work? And maybe give us some advice on how a couple works together and how you keep it together.
I say the couple of things are this. Number one, the younger you are, the better. Especially if you're single or you're just dating. You don't have a ton of responsibilities in terms of families, kids, homes, mortgages, all that kind of stuff. I mean, the younger you can start and learn and take the hits while you don't have a lot of risk on your plate, I think the better. And I tell that to a lot of the women who graduate from the pageant world. I mean, they're in that perfect position in their mid-20s where it's like you got a nice runway of 5 to 10 years here where you can really start up a business, make it successful, and then still reap the rewards and benefits when you have a family of the things that you accomplished before you had them. I have a 2-year-old now and then a 4-week-old in there. And I can tell you it's become a lot harder. There is no way I could have started the businesses that we have now with what I have on my plate here and still do it well. I couldn't be a good dad. I wouldn't be able to have the time for my wife and our marriage and our kids and just even time for myself to get enough rest. And so I really look at that and I'm thankful that I did start it when we first got married. We didn't have a lot of responsibilities on our plate outside of our marriage and our jobs. And so I could spend tons of hours in here in the office on the computer, researching and networking and learning and trying new things and failing a lot. Now I couldn't take those risks because then if I did, I would really be putting my family's future in jeopardy and my kids' education and future in jeopardy, and that it would be difficult. So while you have those abilities, if you do, to start a business while you're, without a lot of responsibility, I would recommend to do so. If you're watching this and you are later on in life and you are in my position or even further than that, maybe you're an empty nester. That's also a good time to start because now you suddenly have a ton of free room up and you're like, wow, okay, what do I do with all this time? Good time to start a business. But the period of life that I'm in right now, kind of that 40 years old to 60 years old, that's a tough time to start a business. So anytime before 40, if it all depends on when people get married and have kids, but that's just been my experience. That would be my advice is do as much as you can, as early as you can, and learn as much as you can because you can apply things a lot more efficiently in the couple of hours I now have a day instead of the 10 hours I used to have where I could literally wake up, go get a workout in, come sit on the computer and not leave it until I went to bed. I mean, those were days that happened all the time.
So when you have challenges working together, what do you think are the most important things to address as a couple? Is it schedules? Is it giving enough time to each other for your own growth and your own interests?
You're talking my wife and I in our business. I think date nights are definitely a good one, where we're sometimes if we're, because we've had arguments over, things that go on in the business or even dealing with employees sometimes. And every now and then a date night helped. We'd go out for sushi and we would just sit down at the table and I would say, look, let's just talk about this. And we would kind of get it all out on the table and understand each other's point of view. And that was very helpful. It kind of would calm those arguments or those heated times in which we were just dealing with some stress in a business. I think the other thing is that you have to be very open and honest with each other about everything, including the finances. I mean, if you are not laying everything out so that each one understands what the other one is doing, there can be distrust. I tend to deal with employee issues. So if we're having an issue with an employee, I'll tend to have that conversation with them privately. We'll pull them into the office and sit them down and talk to them. And she always wants to know exactly what I said. So that way, when she's talking to them, we're not crossing paths on communication or are giving two different stories. And so I think just making sure that you're always laying out everything that each one of you is doing in the business clearly, maybe on a weekly basis. It doesn't have to be daily. That's really important, because if she feels like I'm undermining her, or I'm just not telling her something, even if it's not something I ever meant to hide, it can come off as, wait a minute, what's going on here? And so just trust. Trust is probably the biggest thing in business when you're in business together, to solidify daily and weekly.
Tim, we have a question from one of our listeners, actually in Chicago. And so they want to know, so do you set out particular roles for each of you, like you'd have in a business, so that there's clarity on that?
There is. So with my wife and I and our hair extensions business, I know nothing about hair, clearly. Okay. So hair is not my end of the deal. I don't know anything about it. When I met my wife, she was an incredibly talented hair extension specialist, one of the best in the country. The one thing that she wasn't that great at, that I really felt like I could help her with, was marketing, and just putting together an actual business model that we could grow with and actually hire employees and move into a bigger space, all that stuff. So we laid out the responsibilities that the salon and everything inside of it, that was her domain. She handled the employees, the hair, the orders, the education, all that stuff, customer service, etc. The operations, the marketing, dealing with employee issues, things like that. We decided that that's what would fall under my guys. And so it helped us to just know we had those defined roles, that when something happened, she wouldn't be like, should I do this or should you do this? It would be, you're doing this or I'm doing it. And it ended the discussion right there. And it just really helped us, in the definition of the roles and responsibilities that each one of us takes on a daily basis.
Well, as a success coach and pageant coach, I find it very rewarding when I am engaging with young women that are entering pageants as a curricular activity, but then they realize that it's something that they can actually use as a platform for business. And going back to entrepreneurship, it really, from my experience, I've seen so many women achieve great things in business through pageantry. Do you have sort of any stories of women that you've interviewed that have become multi-millionaires or billionaires because of it?
Plenty of successes. I can tell you the one common theme that I see across almost everybody that I interview is that they all tell me the two things that they pulled from pageantry that have made them or helped them to be successful is, number one, just building confidence by being able to get up on stage in front of people. You and I both know what that feels like. And once you overcome that, it is a very empowering feeling. And then number two is the interview skills. Just being able to get a job or interview for the job that they want and effectively communicate in a way different from the other candidates for that job. They were able to get the job and grow. Networking is the other one, just learning through like, for instance, I don't know if it's in all the states, for the states that I host right now, one of their jobs right now is that they have to go out and sell a certain amount of sponsorships for the program in order to compete. And so that forces them to learn how to sell. And most people hate selling. Selling sucks to some people. And if you don't learn how to sell yourself, that's keys to sales, that's keys to marketing, that's keys to a successful business. And so forcing them to have to go out and do that as a qualifier to even be able to do what they want to do, it's nice incentive, because it by doing what they don't want to do because they have to, they have now learned a skill that they're going to be thankful that they had because of their pageantry experience. So let me think. I'm trying to think of somebody who just killed, Crystal Stewart obviously has made a real name for herself because of pageantry, continues to do in pageantry, acting. Allie Landry, after pageantry became the Doritos girl and then became a well-known host and, has been doing some really great things out there. Shandy and Susie, obviously with their coaching business, have literally built a entrepreneurial business from scratch that they created themselves because they felt like there were no national title holders out there who were doing that type of thing at the time, and are doing very, very well. So those are just some of the ones off the top of my head that I can think of. The other one is Ebony Williams. She's one of the most listened to podcasts that I have. She was the runner-up to Kristen Dalton in 2008 in North Carolina. So this was the pageant before Kristen went on to win Miss USA. Ebony never competed again. it was a crushing blow to her that she lost to Kristen, not because, you know, obviously Kristen was a tough competitor, but it was just Ebony felt like she had done everything possible to be in the best shape and be the best prepared and everything, and just fell short. And it was a crushing blow. Well, she ended up becoming a lawyer. Then she got a job with Fox, was on Fox for a few years. Now she does a lot of different shows, I think The Breakfast Club all the time and a few of these others that are out there. But she's become very successful in her own right, and she does attribute a lot of it to pageantry. She makes a couple of cameos on my podcast every now and then just to kind of talk about it, because she wants to know how important it was to her that, you know, you can talk about being a lawyer or being on television or being a celebrity, but it all goes back to the foundation and the core of where you learn those things and how you learn them. And that's what she attributes to pageantry.
So in terms of our conversation, your last and final tip, and then where to for Tim from here?
Have hope, optimism, dream. I think I see a lot of people right now. I mean, if you watch television all the time, you're probably pretty humdrum about the outcome of life right now. And it just feels like everything's in a bad space. And I couldn't disagree more. I think that there is a lot of opportunity out there right now. I think there are a lot of things coming that is, it's good to be very hopeful for. And I think that we're going to see, you know, a lot of things happen over the next year that are very positive. And so I just want people to have hope. And that's probably one of the biggest things that I, you know, stress to pageant contestants is when they're competing is no matter what happens in the pageant, have hope about what you're going to do in life. I mean, think about all the things that you're going to be able to do because you're doing this. And I would say the same thing for entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are the foundation of the middle class and of America, really. And we need more entrepreneurs. And, you know, they have to have that, as I mentioned, the work ethic and the resilience and the grit. But man, when you get there, when you get to a point where you're doing really well for yourself, and I mean, I'm no millionaire or anything, but you know, we're having a good time and we're doing well for ourselves and we have freedom. And there is nothing better than that freedom of, I don't have to answer to anybody but myself and my own accountability to my business. And, you know, my kids are my accountability. You know, that's right now, that's why I do what I do, is I want to take care of them. I want to give them a good future, a good foundation, obviously keep food on the table. And just be able to enjoy the experiences with them while I have the opportunity.
Well, Tim, wish you the best of luck. And I know that our paths will always cross along the way.
Absolutely.
And congratulations on your business. I mean, as you just said, you know, it's resilience, it's hard work, it's having that hope. Yeah. And so thank you for sharing that with us today. And
thank you for spreading the word and doing this with everybody.
Thank you, Tim. And to all our viewers out there, thank you for joining our Women's Virtual Chats. Inspirational people every week, so be sure to join us again next week Wednesday, 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll see you there. Be safe. Bye-bye.